You know when you cut yourself, right? And let's say you cut your finger and you put plaster on it. I've got one on my elbow. And you put plaster on your elbow. I'll fix the problem. No, you haven't. You've not fixed the problem. I said on this very show on the Wednesday after the Indy race that I enjoyed that Indianapolis race. It was a pure race, start to finish. We had that small, somebody went, it was Justin Haley, wasn't it? Winning the fence, coming out of the chicane early doors. And then from then on, it was a green race. I thought it was great. But maybe that's the Europeanness in me. Fixing this is not the problem. This now, again, rebottles everyone's strategy call, especially as this is a cut-off race. I just think it's just a silly idea, but actually not as silly as the what you mentioned, Ben, which is putting the restart zone back in the Jimmy Johnson tribute final chicane, Ryan Blaney tribute final chicane after that contretemps they had in the first year here, because that's just going to be carnage. Someone already mocked up something I saw today from, I guess it must have been iRacing, with some Rick Allen commentary over it from that first one where they all went in the first corner of Brad Keselowski and they all followed him in. It's just going to be that, pretty much, at every single restart. And we're guaranteed at least now to get free.
First of all, that front stretch chicane shouldn't even exist, by the way. I don't think it's necessary to put that in there. I think having the backstretch chicane slows the cars down enough that, you know, I wasn't a fan of that chicane to begin with, but that's beside the point. And my feelings are, people know how I feel about stage racing. People know how I feel about stage cautions. I said this was a baby step. I said I would like to see us abolish stage racing entirely, go back to 2016 and before. It's a start. I'll take it. But, you know, I'm not a fan of the principle of awarding bonus points throughout the race regardless. And I still think, you know, particularly in Xfinity trucks, even, you know, on non-standalone races, you know, when Kyle Busch is running a truck, he's certainly going to optimize his strategy to go for the win because he doesn't care about stage points, but maybe Zane Smith does. So, you know, I think you still, you know, kind of puts you in a little bit of a box there, so to speak, even when you don't throw a caution. That's not even the biggest issue here. The biggest problem is, and I can't get over it, what did Elton Sawyer talk about consistency in this announcement? You can't change the rules in the middle of a season, let alone in the middle of a postseason. Like, I don't know if there's a good comparison here. Like, imagine if, and again, I know stick and ball sports comparisons are I try to stay away from those, but just for the sake of, you know, argument here, what if the NFL said after the wild card round, okay, the divisional round, we're going to have a 6-minute warning in the fourth quarter and a 10-minute warning in the third quarter to give the teams planned breaks here so that they don't have to burn timeouts and they can reset everything. I mean, regardless of how you feel about that idea, you can't do that in the middle of your postseason. Everybody went into this year expecting that road course races would not have the stage breaks. Now, just a few weeks before the Roval, you're going to say, oh, well, we want to be consistent with how we rule the playoffs, so we're going to throw the stage cautions back in. It's just asinine. And the only thing that NASCAR gets to talk about, they get to take a victory lap on when it comes to consistency, is being consistently inconsistent. Drew Carey would be proud. This is whose line is it anyway? Everything's made up. And by the way, if you win a race, the points don't matter. That's literally what we have here. Whose stock car racing series is it anyway? I guess that's what we call it. I mean, it's just ridiculous to me that we sit here and we talk about constant rule changes and we talk about race control, not officiating these races consistently enough. And then just a few weeks before the final road course of a year, after a couple of races that were relatively clean at Indianapolis and Watkins Glen, like you were mentioning, Matt, I think the problem is the car. The reason that those races were so tame, the reason that those races were snooze fests in the eyes of a lot of fans, even though not everybody, the reason that those fans didn't like those races is because of the way the next-gen car races on the road courses, as Matthew Owens is saying right here. That's the issue. If NASCAR fixes the issue of bad racing on road courses, everything else will get cleaned up. This is putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. You've put 2 pre-planned cautions in here, not to mention changing the restart zone, just for the sole purpose of creating more chaos and controversy. And I'm sure there's going to be something as silly and stupid as a sign falling off one of the banners on the infield, because is that not what happened last year? Is that not what arguably knocks Kyle Larson out of the round of 12 going into the round of 8? And it's going to bunch the field up and we're going to see something stupid on a late race restart like we did in 2018 when Brad Keselowski went and led the entire field into the turn one, Tom's heartburn turn or whatever they called it back then.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
To your point about stick and ball sports, can you imagine watching the NFL playoffs? I don't know. Joe Buck comes out of a break, and don't forget, now we're into the fourth quarter. Touchdowns are only worth 4 points. What?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds silly. It sounds ridiculous. But
if they were going to make this, I know.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I know we haven't had a road course race in the playoffs yet, and that's obviously 4 weeks away. But if they were going to make this change, they should have done it before Darlington.
Yes.
They're 2 weeks late on making this change because the playoffs are, the all-encompassing thing. I know we've only got that one race, and I heard some talk that they talk about bringing Watkins Glen into the playoffs next year potentially. So, or in the change of Roval, or take the Roval out and put the Glen in. I don't know.
To Adam's point, I think with the racing we've seen with the next gen car, again, I'm of the philosophy that no track should have 2 dates. So I think we're the only racing series in the world, aside from IndyCar, I guess, now doing the IMS road course multiple times. But again, that's we talked to the IndyCar schedule. Yeah, enough in the previous segment. If you're going to tell me, I would not be heartbroken if we took. And by the way, I think the Roval was always supposed to be a temporary solution. People loved they loved Sonoma, they loved Watkins Glen. They said we want more road courses, but we have the contracts in for the tracks for a few more years. The best we can do is take this Charlotte date and convert it to the infield road course and kind of give you a third road course race here. And it's gotten some positive reactions, gotten some negative reaction as well. But especially now, if the next gen car is not racing very well on road courses, I would have no problem going back to the oval at Charlotte.
I know what you're saying about the car not working, but there was talk about this a Joe Buck reference. I know you like that one, Matthew. There was talk about this car, being more like a GT car when it was first introduced last season and whatnot else. Well, maybe that's the problem. They've made the car too good, and maybe the last gen car, which wobbled about from here, there, and everywhere, and had terrible gear ratios and whatever else, and no grip. Maybe that suited what we have in. Maybe the car isn't actually it is the problem, but isn't the problem, if that makes sense. If you get what I'm saying, the car's too good, and we need to go back to something from about 2005.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that the problem is not the fact that there were no cautions. The problem is the fact that the next gen car does not race well when it turns left and right. And that's something that we've known for a long time, something fans have talked about for a long time. That's where your focus should be, improving the road course package, not bringing back planned cautions and killing strategy for your playoff road course race here. And then to try to argue that you're doing this in the name of consistency. I don't, you lose all credibility when you say that. This is so consistently inconsistent. It just drives me insane, but we could keep going on this. Matt, I know you have the grid EPI update as you always do. So take it away before I cause myself any further trouble than I already have.